Hey there folks, Andre the Game Idea Guy here, and this is something I hadn't really thought about, even though it's probably been in the back of my mind somewhere before. But as subscribers, also followers, somebody who I follow back and forth with on Twitter, Eric A. Maverick or Eric A. Dub, depending on where you find him, brought up a pretty good point in response to my stream from, well, while I'm recording this would be last night, talking about the potentiality of bringing dual screen gaming back. And that's the whole idea that everyone would get upset over a gimmick being pushed. And if we're being honest with each other, it's not really going to be everyone. It's just going to be a loud group of people on social media talking about how much they dislike the gimmick. But then that brought to mind, after I responded to his comment, that brought to mind that people seem to be afraid of gimmicks. Now, I've done a discussion years ago about this, like many years ago, but the gimmick of something is the hook to it. It's wild to be upset that a gimmick exists to me. But also knowing that human nature in general is to fear that which is unknown to yourself, or be cautious of that which is unknown to yourself, because it doesn't necessarily have to stem from a fear of the unknown, but just a dislike of having to adjust or change. So thinking about that, considering those things, it started to make my brain rattle a little bit. Had me looking at things from a little bit different of an angle. But if we're going to go by this thought process I'm having, should we turn away from gimmicks? Should we turn away from attempting creative ideas because they might not go over well? Should we? Because that's something you got to think about. And thinking about it more, I'm starting to understand that that line of thinking is what has marred the gaming industry into the position it's in now, where gaming budgets are extremely ridiculously high, and pricing is starting to go up because budgets are ridiculously high, and it's not healthy for the industry. That's why we have so many games nowadays that look very similar to other games that are already out. We have games that are literally poor man's versions of other games that released a year ahead of them. And it's all stemming from this idea that we shouldn't branch out to try different things. We should only work with what's already been established. But look at the indie scene for gaming. The indie scene for gaming is booming now. It's blowing up. Part of the reason for that, indie developers take risk on gimmicks. They take risk on things that people don't normally do, or as far as like the major hitters for the industry don't normally do. They bring in newer, different ideas. But those ideas that they bring are also limited to what hardware and platforms they're able to utilize. So if the hardware and the platforms are limited in their scope and capability of what they're allowed to be able to do, that means that the games are going to be limited to that factor. Now, again, that can be a good thing, depending on the level of creativity of the person that's designing the game. Well, level of creativity and technical know-how. But there is also room for innovation in different ways. Now, dual screen is not like a major innovation. in comparison to several things that we've had over the years. But it is still something that we could work with going forward. Now, when I was doing a discussion with last night with Jay Jumped In, I wasn't meaning dual screen gaming only and specifically to have every game have 2 screens, but having it set up so that you can have a game that you can play on 2 separate televisions with only 1 console without having to move it around. I gave several different examples, I think. I may have repeated a couple times, but it's something where we could make bigger and better games without majorly increasing the budgets of the games. Because no matter what situation we go into right now, gaming is going to be more expensive on the developer side as well as on the customer/consumer side. There's no way to avoid that. The only thing that you can do is mitigate how expensive it is. But that's a whole separate side beast from what I'm trying to talk about. We have so much going on in gaming with focus testing and groups looking at stuff and then deciding, oh no, this isn't like the other games, so we don't like it. That way of thinking will completely kill creativity in the games industry. It will kill it. If we keep allowing everything to be held back because, oh, this looks different, so I don't want to try that. Oh, that popular YouTuber I follow, they don't like it, so I'm not going to like it, even though my tastes are almost completely different from theirs. We have run into a situation where the thought of being different or being estranged from what is considered normal has started to bleed into creativity. But the big problem is, with it bleeding into creativity and limiting creativity, guess what that does? Stagnates everything. So that stagnation, based upon perception, is limiting the video game industry. And I keep saying, yeah, we need to bring budgets down. Obviously, there's not a whole lot that can be done with that if companies aren't willing to do it. But if they can find some way to innovate that won't shoot cost up, which would mean that they wouldn't necessarily have to have a machine doing more than what the machines we have now are capable of doing, just being able to adjust what they're capable of doing. I mean, because technically, PS5 is a 2-screen machine. Optionally, if you have a PlayStation Portal, or if you're using PSVR 2. Even though you're personally not utilizing more than 1 screen at a time, the console is still utilizing more than 1 screen at a time if you're using those devices with it. But in our heads, we wouldn't see it that way unless someone points it out to us. And a lot of people wouldn't consider that. But I'm not a lot of people. So, looking at it, like, we're letting the potential fear, not literal fear, but fear of the unknown or something different potentially ruin having more unique and interesting and even fun experiences. Because if, say, and this probably would take a lot of work to set up, but say we have a game console that lets you use 2 different monitors from 2 different sides at the same time. Or maybe you're not even using them from 2 different sides. And your controllers have a headphone jack in it. slash audio, just an audio jack. I'm not even going to say headphone. An audio jack that allows you to put on a headset where you can use a mic with it. And say we have a game where you are an interrogator, or there are two interrogators, maybe potentially playing good cop, bad cop. You can each see from different perspectives of the person that's being interrogated. You can bring your voice and your ideas and thoughts to it. Like, you can go about how you want to interrogate versus how the other person would like to interrogate. That's a dynamic that could be done with two screens and a couple other things. But that can't really be done with a single screen unless you're trying to cram everything all together and only see things from that one angle. Nobody wants to smush. For one of the reasons I understand, like, is one of the reasons that split screen has disappeared, simply because developers don't want to smush down everything into smaller resolutions, or maybe they can't do it without causing problems. But if you don't have to smush it down to resolutions that make it harder to, clearly see what's going on, you can have two screens display at a decent resolution and still be able to see what's going on and what's happening, and still be able to interact with the game. Especially if the game allows you freedom of movement separate from the other player, and you both don't have to be stuck in one location. That works great. And the weird thing is, there are games, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a game that I know is coming to Switch that would let you use two separate switches to play as two different characters from two separate angles. I think the characters are sisters or something like that. So there are games that are coming that use mechanics that having two screens available would be beneficial to have. The Medium came out early in the Xbox Series life. That game, everything is forced to be crammed into one screen for split screen, and it does two completely separate environmental instances. But everything's forced to be crammed into one screen because there's no option to open it up to separate screens. So it's not like the ideas don't exist. There are people are going to have to work around it if they want to do something similar to like the Medium was by Bloober Team. But it's just the idea of attempting to go into something different than what you're used to that seems to be so horrifically scary to people. And personally, I'm like, why is this the scary idea? Why is this the thing we're afraid to try? This is even back during the Wii U. Developers were like, oh no, we don't want to have to make games that work with two screens, when they absolutely didn't have to do that. They had the option to not use the other screen and just be able to do off TV play on it if they wanted to. They used that as an excuse to say they couldn't do it when they could. But that's a whole different beast. But now, going forward, we need ideas that give us a chance to play around with gameplay in different situations. Asymmetrical gameplay is one thing that's a possibility with multiple screens. And even better if you have multiple different controller styles or different input styles that are available for the same platform. Like and this might sound funny, but I can imagine there are people out there who would love to play a game as a hacker for their friend who is playing the game in an action-oriented position with a controller. Like, you playing with the controller or on a single screen doing all the actions, and you're communicating back and forth with your friend who's the hacker who's using a mouse and keyboard. Same platform, same Same physical device running both sides of this for a game. That's a possibility with having the option to have 2 monitors or 2 TVs set up to a game console. And it's a fun idea. Like 2 people playing the game from two very different angles. Like you could be the action character, or shoot, if Ubisoft would be smart enough to do this with Splinter Cell. Like you have one person sneaking around, taking out people, dropping off devices, and the other person has to play the role of the hacker and attempt to hack and disable things and get information. Bruh, I would be all for that. I would love to play both sides of that. But with the way things are currently, we are so limiting to ourselves, or the industry is so limiting to itself, because people are afraid to touch new ideas. That's the whole thing. People are afraid to touch new ideas. Now, understandably, we don't have to change everything. You wouldn't want to force something to be multiple screens if it doesn't have to be. But if the option is available, why not attempt to use it at least? Why not attempt to come up with some new, fun, interesting gameplay scenario that most people wouldn't be able to have? I know I'd be for it. Now my brain is stuck on the whole action stealth hacking thing, and I'm sitting there just like, that would be so awesome. But fearing, attempting, going forward with those things, it doesn't help at all. It doesn't. And I wish that people in general would be more open to trying or accepting new ideas and seeing how they can work. If it doesn't work at all, because it just doesn't work, that's one thing. But it's another thing to completely scoff at the idea of the innovation in and of itself. Now, I know there's probably someone who's going to just be like, well, Andre, though, why can't we just have one person on a computer doing that and the other person play on a game console, and then we have it link across, which you could do that too. But there's no guarantee that it'll work well if you have to run through everything through your Wi-Fi, especially if you end up having some issues with it and the connection goes down. That could mess up the whole experience. But if everything is natively done on one machine, it could make for a whole brand new set of fun scenarios. Like, take for instance, there are so many people that love Dead by Daylight. So many people that love Dead by Daylight. And I know that would be great for a horror-themed movie night or something, or a horror-themed night in general. Or like for somebody to do as like their Halloween thing, to just set up 2 screens and play 4 players on one screen doing split screen, and then you have the big bad on the other screen separate from them, and you have everybody facing away so you can't see what the other people are doing, but you're still together playing with each other. That would be awesome. That would be awesome to be able to do that. And I think that the fear of attempting to play anything or have anything that works ideas in a different way, that is what led to us being stagnated as we are. That's why we ended up with situations like in 7th generation where everything was generally the same muddy greens and browns and oranges for the most part. And a lot of games had the same sepia filter on them. It would be cool to do that. Or House of the Dead is another game that could benefit from this type of scenario. Actually, a lot of on-rail shooters could, where you'd have 2 separate screens. One scenario could be one person using the 2 separate screens, aiming at things that are at different sides of them. But another scenario could be the 2 separate people playing as 2 separate characters, and the characters split up and take different paths, but you still are able to play together, but also individually. Again, it boils down to how this could work. Like, take for instance Virtual Cop 2. Virtual Call 2 gives you the option sometimes to take different paths. Now, you have two individual people on two separate screens, and they both select different paths. You can logically take those two separate paths and complete those two paths independently of each other. That's the type of stuff that I could see happening if people would be more willing to embrace this concept. Heck, if they were more willing to embrace different concepts in general. Because if we keep the controller format the same and we keep just upping the graphics, we're going to hit that ceiling of not being able to change much. And it's already coming down very hard on us. As far as the graphics are concerned, we've hit that plateau. We've hit that plateau where the only way to get better than it is now is to make it extremely more expensive. So the only other thing you can do is change the avenues and way the games are played, which Nintendo figured out decades ago. But I'll get down off my soapbox. I think I'm done. If anybody would like to add anything or potentially think up some ideas that I might not have, because I honestly really didn't put as much effort into the ideas, though I did have the one that sounded really fun. Let's talk about it. Like, say what you got to say your piece, and well, that's it. Thank you guys very much for listening. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me, and until the next time, enjoy your games. Peace out, everybody. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy, and I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. If you would be interested in supporting my efforts in content creation, please head on over to Amazon and look up The Game Idea Guy Presents Gaming Word Search, and you will find both Volume 1 and Volume 2 up for sale. Thank you very much once again, and I hope to be able to create more content for you in the future. Peace out.